Carl and Brendan here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. And it's track by track time as making their debut on this series, amazingly only making their debut. It's Avatar. We're taking a look at Black Waltz. This was a Brendan's choice one. And it's one of those where I'm like, why did he choose? I can't quite work out why you chose Black Waltz. Was it random?
No, not really. I think
it could have been any, really.
I think yeah, it could have been. I think Black Waltz was like, I mean, it's just what I believe. I don't know this to be true, but Black Waltz to me was like, this was when Avatar started transforming, I guess, a little bit from the sort of what they were before, the traditional kind of more traditional anyway. They were always a little quirky, but more traditional, mellow, death sort of sound. And the whole persona that Johannes eventually took on came on in this album. You know, the makeup, everything like that. This was kind of, yeah, I guess this is a bit of a starting point for my preference of what Avatar became.
Right. Well, that's cool. You said you're not sure if it's true. What you just said is 100% true. I did some digging into the background of this album and found an interview with Johannes where he talked about this was the introduction of the clown makeup that he would end up wearing, and it was also the first start of them finding what they now believe is their sound. So you're actually 100% right about that. It basically is the Avatar you know today, the Avatar that's released the last couple of albums, the Avatar for Avatar Country, seems to have been properly birthed here. Mm-hmm. Though, so yeah, that aspect does make sense because it is the fourth album as well. Released January 25th, 2012. So it's a 10-year-old album as of the time of recording. And it's also one that a lot of fans will know well, thanks to specific tracks that exist on it, tracks that are staples of an Avatar live show, often considered some of their best tracks. And certainly on an album I've listened to all the way through, so there's a couple of surprises for me, whereas there are other ones where I recognized, but I didn't know the titles, and I was like, oh, that's what that track's called. Right, now I know, that kind of situation. Yeah. But it's a good album overall, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I know it. I know it very, very well. I didn't know it as an album at first because actually this is obviously the Avatar story for me, which all came from that the European Metal Festival Alliance during lockdown when Bloodstock and other Alcatraz, I think it was, and I think in particular it was Avatar's performance at Alcatraz. I think that was played.
Yeah.
And up to that point, I knew who Avatar were, but I had never really listened to them and never really given them a proper chance. And I watched that performance, and it was a couple of songs from this album, really, that I didn't know it from this album at the time, but I was just like, oh shit, man, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So that, and they kind of started the journey for me, I guess, in a way. But yeah, like I didn't know, like when I was listening to these songs at the beginning, like I'm really, really enjoying them. I didn't know what album songs were from. I didn't know that. I didn't really realize, like there's a lot of stuff I didn't realize. I didn't realize, like you said, this is a 10-year-old album, but it's also their fourth album, isn't it? So, you know, that's a pretty hefty career. Do you know what I mean? And I never really considered that. I don't know why, but because I wasn't listening to them, I was just like, some young whippersnappers called Avatar, you know, releasing their debut quirky album or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah. So over time, I became a bigger fan, and then I started listening to them, and I like a lot of the earlier stuff too. I do genuinely. I think it's good, but I definitely prefer it when this transformation happened. Like that's my preferred bit. And actually, it's not even my favorite. Like overall, it's a very strong album. You're right. I agree with that. It's not my favorite album, I don't think overall, but it has got some absolute bangers on it and a couple of songs, like I said, which I are now my this is the songs that introduced me to Avatar sort of one. So.
Yeah, we you know, if you watch along with our channel and read along on the site, you'll know that Avatar have had a fair amount of coverage over the years, but that certainly shouldn't imply, because my story of Avatar is only slightly before Brendan's, but only slightly, and more because of the website more than anything else, which is I heard of Avatar and I might have heard songs. I was very much a whole, it didn't look like it would be for me. So I actually remember there was a Bloodstock that before you were coming, they were on like midday, like during the day on the main stage. And I kind of remember not going near, like, oh yeah, I'm not going to go see that band because they look like they're like Black Veil Brides or something like that. Now reflecting on that, fucking how stupid was I? Because it was the opportunity during the Avatar Country release and getting that album to review and going to interview Johannes at Brixton that opened my eyes. And then I realized how obviously the mistake of the judgment I'd made on it, the sort of thing that I would never do nowadays. And since then, go to the channel, you'll see there's been 3 interviews in total now to date with Johannes, and each one is as interesting as the last. Fascinating dude. And as well as live stream reviews for the Big Ages thing that Brendan did. What was that? January 2021?
Yeah,
2021.
Avatar URI.
Yeah, that, and of course that live stream that you've mentioned, that was August 2020 as well. So yeah, it's all there. So it's probably high time we hit a track by track cover on one of these albums, and we're going to do Black Waltz, kicking off with Let Us Die. For me, it's got a thumping start that has kick-ass rhythm, nice and heavy, but immediately is quite catchy. The prominence of the drums are a little off-putting at first, but it actually kind of settles in my brain after a minute or two, and I'm like, okay, no, I can get used to that. I like the riffs of this one, but it's a really, really surprisingly heavy start, right? Knowing Avatar what I do now, I'm like, that is a really heavy start. Knowing that it's a transition album from what they were before to what they are becoming now, it makes a lot more sense. It's quite something.
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it as well. I don't know if it was like ease them in slowly sort of thing, or it was just like, I don't know, like a prank. Yeah, let's hit them with a heavy one, and then we'll start fucking about after that and be like, gotcha. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Everything you said, it's nice and chunky, like good riff, very heavy. The drums are prominent. I like the fact that the drums are prominent. Vocals are heavy pretty much throughout. It's just like a strong kind of blasty song. Yeah, I like it. I think that this album, the thing with this album, I don't think there's many songs that I'm going to say I don't like, but the problem with this album we're going to have is that, like, and with this song it is as well, this is a good song, but it's just so far from the best on this album that sometimes it feels like it's a bad song, but it's not. It's a really, really good song. It's just there's different bars on this album.
That's exactly it. And I think that gets proven straight away as we go into Torn Apart. And for me, this was like, now we're getting to the really good territory where Avatar start to come into their own as they deliver groovy, head-banging heaviness with a wacky and an unusual underbelly. This is a track that's a bit all over the place at times, but comes together when it needs to create something that I think sounds really unique, especially when we get to the haunting melody section. It's also, for me, got one of the harshest vocal performances on the album too, which is really surprising considering obviously when Johannes goes heavy, he goes heavy. But this song in particular, I thought he was pushing his vocal cords to the max, man.
Yeah, I also the video for this film, we can get to see the video. The video is awesome as well, isn't it? I don't know if you remember the video. It's all filmed in reverse.
I don't think I've seen the video, no.
Right, it's filmed completely in reverse. So like, yeah, it's like a bar brawl sort of scene. They're like playing on the stage, like 3 fans or something like that in a bar brawl. But then the whole thing's like played backwards. Cool. That's pretty cool. But yeah, it's just such a brilliant song. I just instantly straight away from the beginning intro, like it's instantly catchy. Like doesn't take like 10-20 seconds for you to get into it. It just drops and you're like, oh shit, yeah, that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. I love that song that it's so instantly accessible. Vocals, like you said, are amazing all the way through it. Chorus, really, really simple, just torn apart, but like you said, really stretching like that growl out, like properly putting some depth and power behind it. That little dreamy slow down section as well. Guitars are great, the drums are great. Like, yeah, it's just brilliant. One of my favorite overall Avatar tracks. And it's weird because if somebody was to ask me, like, I'll do a top 10 of Avatar tracks, I don't think I would even like consider Torn Apart. But then the second I hear it, I'm like, oh, this track's fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's not one, if you look at Avatar playlist, it may not be up near the top of the songs that kind of people expect to be there, but it really is one of, at least for me, strongest on this album. We've probably given away, both of us there, where that track's going to sit in regards to the top 3 at the end. But before then, we got ready for the ride. This is a short slice of melodic heaviness where speed seems to be the aim, and it's something they meet with aplomb. The guitars and drums are on fire. It's good.
Yeah, same again. Like, I mean, we're going to be probably quite similar across all of this album, I think. You know, I like the little melody at the beginning and the riff when it picks up, but the drums are the standout instrument, and dude just goes through this mix of like insane speed and then like dropping down into that kind of nice groovy tempo and then back to speed again. He's obviously, you know, as I know he is now, but I maybe wouldn't have at the time. Like he's amazingly talented as a drummer. Very, very, very solid drummer. So yeah, nice, speedy, heavy number. Quite quirky, quite interesting in the way that it's structured, but and also has a really, really cool guitar solo as it gets near the end. So, you know, again, we do this a lot with the band, like and a lot of bands as well, because obviously if we like a band, that generally by nature tends to mean that we think the people in it are talented, like, you know what I mean? But otherwise we wouldn't maybe like them. But I do think Avatar are like they're quite heavily weighted in all departments.
Yeah, it's a more complete band than anything else. You are right. You do that thing where you like a band, but you and I can both acknowledge many bands we do like where someone maybe potentially isn't the best at what they specifically do, but it fits that sound perfectly. You know, Lemmy wasn't the greatest vocalist, but fuck me, did it work for Motorhead. Lars Ulrich is not the best drummer, but what he does in Metallica and so on. Avatar is a complete package. Each individual member seems be uber talented exactly what they do, whereas I think if you pulled one of them out and put them into another band, they'd be as good. Like, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah I think you can tell that sometimes as well with bands like that are maybe a bit, I don't know, a bit more quirky and creative, because I don't know if I feel like that's probably, don't get me wrong, I understand, like if you're in an extreme death metal band and you like, you know, you're hitting the double bass and blasting blast beats all the way through a song, I completely get the talent and the you know, the power and strength behind doing that. But I think it must take like an extra level of talent to be able to do that, but then also come in with all the other parts where you got to be the quirkier side and the offbeat stuff. And like, do you know what I mean? You're not just like a great soloist writing solos for thrash. You have to write a solo for almost song by song, because there are so many creative twists and quirks across an album. You know, so I think not saying just Avatar, but bands that play around a little bit, you know, in these sorts of like, you never know what genre you're going to get. The musicians within the band have to have a hell of a lot more strings to their bow, surely.
Yeah, well said. All right, in Napalm, this is a real heavy hitter in this album. The build-up is golden, and the riffs that follow just as good. The beat is nice, and the moody drop makes for a very different direction, as does the clean singing. Big fan of this track.
Yeah, same. It's I kind of like with this album by this point, like I felt like they were kind of going for like a pattern. You know, so you kind of had the heavy starter, then followed by the real groove of Torn Apart. Then we go back for a heavy Ready for the Ride. And then in Napalm's got that kind of thick groove again to it. But it's a really, really strong song. It's really, really, it showcases like the heavy vocals again, but actually it's the singing part of it, because I think it's the first song on this album where he sings as well. So like you don't really get any singing in the first three of it, not properly. So up to this point, it had been like death metal vocals as such, or, you know, all the way through. So this was like, oh, let's quirk things up a bit. And it has other little bits as well. Like the guitar solo is very, very odd. And like in a good way, like it's kind of like, oh, that's an interesting noise, you know, but it is odd. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it as well. It was awesome when they did this in Ages as well. I remember watching that, and that we reacted to a video of that. That's on our YouTube channel as well. I'm a big fan of the song. Yeah, it's great.
It is. But there's still more to come. Brennan already kind of dropped the hint there as well. There's going to be very little disagreement on this one, because when we get Black Waltz, and this is just another addictive banger. That might be the most horror-infused dance ever heard, because that's the element. It's called Black Waltz for a reason. It's the title track, and you will get that through. The haunting melody, the rhythmic beat, the touches of odd moments, and of course, a meaty metal edge. It's another winning track. Like at this point, I was like, shit, is this going to be like, this album is going to be beginning to end of just like, yeah, this is great all the way through.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if this was my first introduction to Avatar, as quirky as I thought everything had been up until this point, like this would have definitely taken it to a new level. you know, it is like I agree. Yeah, the horror sort of element comes through. It's creepy. It's slightly insane, like which is meant to be. I think it's meant to be like kind of insane. You know, it's got great. It's got a lot of everything. It's got great melodies. Um, it's very. It's actually a very sad song. Really, it's very depressive. And like I said, very very mental. But I love everything about it. I love how the vocals are delivered. I love how much kind of passion and emotion he throws into every sort of line that he sings. And I also really like how just him suddenly going suddenly becomes effective use of the English language, like in this song. Whereas in most other elements, if somebody was doing that, you just be like, "Come on, man, you could have written something better than that." But here it just works. It's like that. There was no better lyric you could have written for that part.
No, yeah. Didn't even know this would be the problem.
I know it's also, and actually it is in one element, but I would again. But this is a song I think if somebody was saying to me like, play me a song that maybe encapsulates what Avatar are about, that I think Black Waltz would possibly be one of the few songs that I go, this is Avatar.
Yeah, I think that's a good argument to make because because you wouldn't want to sort of put your your flag to this one, but it would be a great example because for me, you'd want to get across the playful, sinister edge, the horror style stuff they have, and this is probably the best example of that at this point, anyway. But following your theme, the next one is a heavy one, so we are back to a bit more brutalities. It's Blood, a banging blast of heavy. The energy in this one is simply high. But the thump of the instruments has Avatar reaching probably the most brutal depths they've reached instrumentally on this album to this point. I do like it a lot. It's one that I probably, if just saying to me, all right, take a track or two of this album to shorten it, I'd probably go, yeah, you can take that off. It's not really needed. It's good. Like, it's not a complaint, but it's more that I don't see it as necessary either.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's got a tough like position on the album. I think as well. Like you've just come out of that kind of, I don't know, that thought process that you go through with Black Waltz, and then I guess in one way it's a nice little palate cleanser, but in the other way it's kind of like, I don't know, you've just gone from all that madness to then like quite a straightforward blast of metal, which again I agree with you is really really good. I do enjoy it. Best rendition of this I've ever seen actually is the video that Avatar did on YouTube where they do an a cappella version of this, which is quite good fun. But I think probably the thing I like about it the best, and actually it probably wouldn't work otherwise, is just the fact that it's not in English. I think that's quite cool. I think that makes a song. I think if he was just shouting blood, 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 like in English, it would probably have been like even less impressive.
That is true. Something about the Swedish language that does gives it a little bit more impact. But its positioning does also make sense when you consider what follows it, because it's Let It Burn. This is leaning towards more of a rockier sound, but with a sinister edge. The major selling point of this track for me are the riffs, because there's some killer stuff in this, but also the cleaner, throatier vocal style he goes for here. So it's clean singing, but it's not singing. It's very kind of raw at the back of his throat. And both of those make this one stand out for being quite different on the album. And it's, to me, weirdly enough, at this point, I thought this was the most creative sounding track on the album.
It's got, like, I think I remember the first time I listened to this and being thrown by the kind of country twang to the guitars. But I think I'd been thrown by it because I'd also, around that time, not knowing what songs come from what albums, had been listening to, say, Avatar Country. So my assumption was probably that this was a song from Avatar Country because I didn't really know what any of it was about. And there's a bit of a country twang to it. And actually, I think it would have fitted that album pretty well anyway. But I do really, really like it again. Again, this is one of those ones like that have that, I don't know, that In Napalm or that Torn Apart sort of groove and really thick sort of sounding, rich guitar sound, which I think is great. The vocals, like you said, that kind of attitude to his vocals, and also just the way that he builds, because he builds and builds until he ends up like kind of in a roar or a shout or sometimes a scream for the chorus, which is just him saying "Let it burn." And again, it's like such a simple thing, like, but it's just effective. It's the way they use it, like, you know what I mean? Like, just build, like, it's not rare for a band to go, oh, we start singing and we build and build and build and then shout the chorus. That's like completely common in metal, but they just use the tools they've got really, really well and really effectively. You know, and I also really like the ending of it when it kind of he almost gets like maniacal, you know, with the screaming of "Let It Burn" as it fades out. You know, starts off whispering, doesn't he? Like "Let it burn," and then he builds up till by the end of it, he's in some mad high pitched sort of screaming. And yeah, it's definitely agree with you. It's creative. It's odd. Again, it's at times just simple brilliance, and but you know, they just keep you there. They keep you engaged throughout the song. And that's what I really liked about these sorts of Avatar songs when I was listening to them, was like, there ain't really a point in a lot of these songs, like especially these ones that we prefer, where you feel like you can phase out for a few minutes because maybe you're doing something and come back in. Like you feel like you'd miss something if you did. You feel like, you know, I'm going to stay focused because he's going to do something fucking stupid in a minute and I want to hear it.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe this track, and sums a lot what Avatar do, because doing a track by track, sometimes when you're listening to a track for the notes and you're 2 minutes into it, and let's say it's something like Deicide or something like that, you kind of, someone's like, I don't need to listen to the last minute, I'm going to skip to the next, I've got the gist of it, I've got my notes and all that. They're not going to do some about turn and I'm going to start singing, crooning or anything like that.
Yeah,
you can't do that with Avatar. I didn't find I could do that with Black Waltz. I kept kind of having to go, I've got to listen to the full thing because who knows what happened in the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
One touch, talking of kind of more basic though, chunky, meaty instrumentation, filthy sound of vocals, and switching tempos make this a solid, if uninteresting, listen. Probably my least favorite track on the album.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my least favorite or not, but it's it would be in the bottom. Like if I was tier listing the album, like this would be down the bottom. Again, it's not a bad song. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. It's got good rhythm, decent riffs, drums, catchy enough chorus. The solo's a nice quirky one. I had a bit of a problem with the solo. I always felt like the solo didn't really fit the song.
Yeah,
like I was just like, it's a good solo, it's a good song, but like they just didn't feel like they necessarily belong together. So yeah, it's that whole thing again. This is a very good song. It's just, firstly, it's surrounded by a lot of very, very good songs, like really, really good songs.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things, like sometimes, and you know, I know it sounds disrespectful and all that, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, it's just reality, is that now that I know this album so well, if I was playing this like not on shuffle but playing it end to end, and I just listen to Let It Burn, the chances are I'm going forward one more actually, because I'm like, you know, I'll go to the one after this.
Yeah, it's that. It really is, because it's a sandwich here. You go for Let It Burn, you go to One Touch, and then you go to this one. It is, of course, Paint Me Red. I think it's hilarious that some of Avatar's biggest tracks to date on this album as well come at the end. Come right at the end. This is a banger. It really is. And I've heard this track quite a lot, but I still get so stoked. And when it plays, it's such heavy groove. It's got aggression. That chorus, man, that chorus is stupid stuff. You talked to me before about example of tracks you'd choose to show Avatar off to someone. Paint Me Red. It's up there in top 5, top 3 at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This would definitely be in it as well. And actually, this is the first, not of the 2 tracks that I saw in the European Metal Festival Alliance headline show. This was the first one that I was like, "What the fuck? Like, oh shit, what have I been missing?" You know, this was the one that really and the weird thing is, like, I was drinking. I'm always drinking, but I actually watched that whole Avatar show, and strangely enough, that means that I watched every song that came before this, because I believe this was in the encore that they did, or the last couple of tracks that they did.
I vaguely remember it, yeah.
So I watched the whole thing all the way through, and then but like probably drinking and chatting and everything like that, and then this song came on, and everything stopped for me, and I was like, right, what is this? You know what I mean? It's interesting that, because even though I then went on to love so many Avatar songs, which must have been probably played before that one, none of them caught my ear as much as this song did, which is like quite telling, isn't it? Like in the stupor of alcohol and, you know, food and sun and everything like that.
Yeah, because that point was like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, the notes of Paint Me Red played out, and like across the field, I, you know, slow motion, soft music. I went running towards the laptop, and the rest was history. You know? But I love it. I think like it's not even like, it's not their quirkiest, it's not their most weird, it's nothing like that. It's just a phenomenal song, man. It's so catchy, brilliantly memorable, great headbanging rhythm, heavy verses. The chorus is just brilliant. It's absolutely instantly singable. Like, you know, every time that comes on, you got to sing it.
Yeah.
I love that kind of like sped up running out a cover sort of bit with the drums, kind of, you know, John lets loose on the drums and the solo. It's got absolutely everything. It isn't like, you know, you're right. Like for me, it's in the top Avatar songs ever, but it's also one of my favorite songs ever. Wouldn't put it in a position, like, I don't know where it fits, like whether it's in a top 10 or a top 50 or whatever, but it's one of my favorite metal songs in general.
No, it's an incredible track in this, and like continuing that sort of theme of the Avatar hits coming at the end of this album, the penultimate track is "Smells Like a Freak Show," another Avatar favorite, one of the biggest hits, and for good reason. Although it's far from my personal favorite, I do like it a lot though. I just don't love it quite as much as others do. It's got kick-ass riffs, some really snarling vocals, and some very catchy touches. You can see why it's a live favorite.
Yeah, and I fall into the category of the others. You know, to me, this is like even above Paint Me Red, or at least on the same level as Paint Me Red. Like, this is another, to me, instant classic.
Wow.
You know, 2 in a row, 2 instant classics. I always felt like, and I still do now. I still like, but like, I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I would change the album necessarily, but I always felt that this is the perfect. This should have been the album opener, like, you know, welcoming everyone to the freak show that is Black Waltz, you know, and kind of getting it into that way. But anyway, you know, similar to Paint Me Red, I find this song similar to Paint Me Red, and actually, I harking back to that same European Metal Festival Alliance, this was the second track of the encore. So it was Paint Me Red, and then they ended on this song, and they were the two, and I was like, wow, I'm in. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe it does seem odd to me, like where they are in the album, like maybe they didn't realize how, like, you know, like whether they were going to hit. I don't know what songs were released as singles from this album. That'd be quite interesting to find out, you know.
I didn't see that, no.
But, you know, normally when you get to this back end of the album, like in these sorts of positions, these aren't single tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Which is interesting that, like, you know, like, I don't know, a lot of fans, a lot of people that I know that like Avatar would put these two down as like two of their favorite all-time Avatar songs, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's just got everything. It's got everything Paint Me Red has, you know. It's got a wicked rhythm, heavy vocals, really, really catchy and singable chorus. The way he extends the second chorus to then go into the slower section, where he drags out the show part of Freak Show, and then it goes into the solo. Yeah, just brilliant. Wonderful track.
Yeah, I find it quite amazing that you put it up there quite so high. Is like, yeah, I just don't. And it's kind of like, it's not a slur on the track. It really, really fucking is, you know? And it's just incredible to find those two sitting together at the back end of this album. I just find that incredible. Which does bring us to the end. And it is an end, put it that way. It is Use Your Tongue, an oddity, as it's nearly 10 minutes long. So straight away, that's like, wait, what? And this isn't really, really strange. It's a mix of pounding and thumping, heavy blast, progressive melody, a harmonica, soloing, and to be honest, so much more. This is a kitchen sink track. It's very cool. I do think it's very cool. And it's very grand for an ending. But I'm like, is this necessary? Is this just proper kitchen sink stuff? And was it necessary, particularly coming off the back of Paint Me Red and Smells Like a Freak Show? I'm like, this doesn't feel like you needed to do this as well. Even though I'm like, no, this is still so weird and different. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, you literally like wrote similar words, the same terminology that I use. You know, the first words I wrote down was "what an oddity."
Yeah.
And again, like the things you pointed out, you know, from country-styled harmonicas through to, you know, the heavier stuff and just a bit of everything. It's just really, really odd. Everything about it. It's got odd lyrics, you know. Use your tongue to clean her wound, and you know, it's odd lyrically. It's got an odd style, but it's not unpleasant to listen to at all. It's just far from the best the album's got to offer, and for me, it's just an odd ending. But I don't know, it's difficult when you're going back to an album from 10 years ago. That also is a pretty successful album. When the band put this out, they have no idea how successful it is or isn't going to be. So you position it based on what they know at the time. I guess in hindsight, I wonder if they would be like, well, yeah, okay, if we'd have fucking known they were all going to like Paint Me Red or, you know, Let It Burn, maybe we would have ended on that. But we just assumed they'd fucking hate them ones. And,
you know, learn that lesson later on in albums and put tracks like The Eagle Has Landed a bit closer at the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much wall-to-wall bangers. Even a few tracks that maybe were above, like, okay, this could have been, you know, this or whatever, or changed or wasn't necessary, is not unlikable. There's nothing bad. I don't think there's a bad track in this album, which is obviously incredible, an achievement for this band. I think we pretty much we're talking probably giving the game away over all our threes, but let's do it anyway. Of course, your top 3 tracks.
Yeah, so you're right. I think, I mean, it is quite tough again though, like, and that's one of the problems when an album's so strong. But for me, the top 3 that I had is Torn Apart, Smells Like a Freak Show, and Paint Me Red. Okay,
we're 2 out of 3. And I think that was obvious as well, that I would have Torn Apart and I would also have Paint Me Red. The other one I chose is In Napalm, which I'd imagine would be 4th or 5th maybe for you anyway.
Yeah, like I said, it's difficult, isn't it? Because that, and then I'm looking at Black Waltz and Let It Burn, and it's like, I could easily have done a top 6 or 7 from this without having to think about it, you know. And that's a good album then.
Yeah, it's an incredible return. It really, really is. It's Avatar's debut on Track by Track. You know, they've got so many records. You know, we'll be back to this at some point in the future. But for now, you got any thoughts on the album? Were you an early Avatar adopter? Were you screaming her name 10 years ago and wondering why nobody was listening? Or are you like us, fairly modern to this band and just have grown to appreciate them? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?